Hi, welcome to the Danny Johnson Show. I'm Danny Johnson. Hey, thanks so much for being here with me today. I'm here in our home office slash studio, whatever you want to call it. It's a gorgeous day outside, but man, sun is nice, a little bit crisp out there. I hope that today finds you really, really blessed as we're kind of kicking off the brand new year, and 2019 is like already under our feet. It's already the breath that's in our nose. It's already the thing that is in front of us, and already it is behind us by several days, right? And I don't know, I felt like 2018 went by so fast, and I heard from other people that thought it went really, really slow. But what we're gonna talk about today is the dream that is inside of you, or the one that maybe you're afraid to dream, the thing that you're afraid to think about, that maybe you might have through some really bad teaching along the way, that somehow God does not want you to have a dream, that somehow He doesn't want you to dream of things like, I don't know, traveling around the world, or I don't know, living in a certain kind of a house, and whatever it is, the dream that is that you have. I want to encourage you today that what if, friend, that there's a dream inside of you that He's the one that actually planted it. He's the one that planted it when you were knitted together in your mother's womb. And maybe that you are the one who have talked yourself right out of it. What if it is that there is a specific assignment that you have here on planet Earth, and you have chosen to just go, oh, no, that must not be right. That must not be God. That must not be for me. Because somewhere down the line, somebody has programmed you to believe that you're lesser than, or that you're not enough, or that God doesn't do things like that. And so I don't know if you had heard or not, and I don't know if this is your very first time joining us on this particular platform, whichever way it is that you are watching or listening to this particular message. But if this is your very first time joining us, I grew up in a violently abusive, drug-infested home where dreaming was like, it didn't happen. Do you understand? Like trying to plot out a future, setting goals. Like these were not conversations in the household that I grew up in. I grew up surrounded by a tremendous amount of drugs, and a lot of violence, physical violence, as well as emotional, like lots of emotional abuse, being screamed at, cursed at, being told, my sisters and I, and my mother, unfortunately, that, in fact, I don't think anybody should ever be treated like this, but we were all very badly abused, and it was a horrific place to actually grow up in. And so when you grow up like that, you kind of have in your mind that you're worthless. I felt like I was useless. I was nothing. I was never going to amount to anything. I would never succeed at anything. Why even try? That I would always be a failure. And so when I got introduced to the whole business community, and I got introduced to people who had dreams, and they had some really crazy, huge astronomical goals, that was like a complete foreign thing to me. Outside of basketball, which in basketball, that I played since I was 6 years old, that kind of, I would say, kind of planted a few little seeds about having a goal, right? What's the goal if you're playing basketball? To win, obviously, right? That's the goal, is to win. And so that would be like and that wasn't necessarily instilled by my parents by any stretch of the imagination. And of course, I think school kind of sets us up for, wanting to hit good grades so that you can, move past the grade that you're in, right? So you got to get a certain GPA, if you will, a grade point average, in order to be able to move on to the next grade level, so that you can eventually get out of that institution, right? Where sadly, so many people inside of this country, they just always say, I hate school, and I sadly happen to be one of them. Even though it was almost a form of an escape for me, because the house that I was in, the weekends were horrible. I mean, I was not that person that looked forward to the weekends, because they were terrible. There was just so much hostility and so much fighting and so much screaming. And then of course the blows, being grabbed by the throat, shoved up against walls, and kicked across the room by a size 16 shoe. Do you understand? Like, it was a horrific, the weekends were terrible. The night times were terrible. So I felt really, really blessed during the season of sports, because I got to stay away from the home more often. And so I say this to say this. We get some training and some programming inside of our mind that kind of sets us up for failure for our future. But I believe that the creator of the heavens and the earth actually plants things inside of you, because there's things that He is leading you to. And due to depending on the kind of training it is that you had while you were growing up, whether you grew up in the house that I grew up in and you just hear every excuse that exists, or there's never even a conversation about dreams. There's not even a conversation of what do you want to do when you get older? What do you want to do with your life? Or even in a home where, maybe you were blessed. You grew up in a home where your strengths were really highlighted to you. You know what I mean? Like you had parents that really celebrated the uniqueness of who you were, whether it was the uniqueness of your style, or was the uniqueness of your voice, or the uniqueness of how you dress, the uniqueness of what your interests were. We have 5 children and 8 grandchildren. So you want to talk about uniqueness of the 5 that we had, like so unbelievably unique, each and every one of them just so completely different. And so when it came time to raising my kids, I wanted to make sure and just highlight the beautiful things about them instead of being that parent that put down on them and tried to change them. I wanted to celebrate and also seek my God on how he formed them. And so regardless of how you grew up, whether you grew up in the kind of home where your uniqueness was celebrated and there was space made for you to grow up in who you were designed to be, or you grew up in a house like I grew up in where there was like no room for you to even be a child, to spill milk, to trip on something without being thoroughly made fun of and or beaten because you spilled something or did something wrong, or having a nice big fat backhand up inside the face, being sent to your room, being screamed at, whatever. So it doesn't matter, to be honest with you. Okay, I simply just give that part of the story to just kind of give you a foundation of where I started from, because where I ended up is nowhere near where I started from. And you have the capacity to do the same thing, because literally I went from, that badly abused home and having, a teen pregnancy, being a welfare recipient, to being homeless, to 2 years later being a millionaire. And not because I married somebody. Actually, I can't say it's because I married somebody. The somebody who actually left me with $2.03 to my name and a $35,000 debt, which then spurred in me to make a new decision that there was no way that I was willing to end my life in that pathetic place. And mind you, I spent 30 days homeless and I was suicidal every single day until a very powerful and amazing experience that I had literally on December 25th, hearing a voice tell me to pick up my mat and walk. And within 2 years, I had made my first million. Today, as a multimillionaire, running a couple of companies and giving the profits away. My salary gets donated to the extreme poor, or the trafficked, helping kids get delivered out of brothels and delivered out of the sex from being sexually trafficked sexually. I don't know which way I should say that. Or the different types of businesses that we have. We are producing content, like for example, this particular show. And so anyway, now being in a position to be totally financially free to where we can give it all away. And that to me is true financial independence. So here it is, a new year. Here it is, a new season. Here it is, a new time. And I really want you to press into perhaps that there is a dream inside of you that you might be purposely holding back, and you don't even realize that you're holding it back. And it could be the training that you had as a child, and or it could be some religious training that you've had through church, through Bible studies or whatever. And so I just want to just be like so upfront with you and real about the journey and the story in which God Almighty has done through my life, because he plays no favorites. But there were some things that I found in the best success book ever written, which he is the author of it and used a bunch of other people to write it on his behalf. And he gives us like a final copy about how to live our life. He gives us direction, and he also in that book plants vision inside of us. And I watch everyday average human beings who are just like myself, some of which that grew up the way that I did, and some of which that had a great childhood and maybe grew up in a religious environment that was very controlling, that was very demeaning, that was very constricted. And yet we read through the Bible and we do not see a constricted God. We also don't see the people of God to be constricted either. We see some wild and crazy stories throughout this thing. And so what if you're the next wild and crazy story that he wants to write? What if that is true? So are you that person that there has been a dream that has tried to bubble up inside of you and you're the one that's actually stopping it? Are you the one that is thinking, oh, God must not want me to do that? Are you thinking, it's probably wrong, for me to have a goal that's like that? It's probably selfish of me to have a goal like that. These are things that I used to think, right? And so when I would have, for example, I'll tell you, traveling is like a really big thing for me personally. And I will say that's like, not the highest thing on my list. Obviously, my marriage with Hans is the highest thing on my list after, of course, my relationship with him. But as far as how I live out my life, I want to honor him, the creator of the heavens and the earth, right? And I want to express that through how my marriage is. I want to express that with how I treat my husband and the kind of harmony and peace that we share, as well as passion and love and fire and wonderfulness and great experiences that we're having with each other, as well as challenging experiences that we have with each other. And that I want to make sure that we honor our God inside of that. And I can't control my husband. I can just control myself. So when I look at the Torah, which is the original Bible that was written, and everything is summed up inside that entire Torah, which was the first 5 books of Moses, where it is, everything gets summed up. In fact, it says it right here in Galatians, which is the second testament and the second writings that was written. Guess what? Yes, I can see. Okay, wait, guess what? I'm gonna put these on. Oh my gosh, and they're terrible. Don't laugh. Hi. Okay, don't laugh. All right, so here's what it says. It says in Galatians 5, let's start at verse 14. It says, for the entire Torah is properly understood in one word manifestation. You will love your neighbor as you would yourself. Okay? And then it goes on to say in verse 15, but if you bite and devour one another, beware, or else you consume one another. For flesh desires a thing that is against the spirit, and the spirit desires a thing that is against the flesh, and both of these are opposed to one another, so that you are not able to do as you wish. All right, so let's just stop right there. Okay, so listen up. After you're done laughing about my glasses. Okay, so listen up. So the reality is that when I look at what the full Torah, right, and everything that is in the Bible after the Torah always relates back to the original 5 books of Moses that God spoke to Moses. And it really is a final copy, an owner's manual, if you will, of how to live, which is like such a beautiful thing. And so I want to make sure that if I say that I know him and that I love him, and yet I am rude, mean-spirited, and nasty to my husband, and I'm neglectful of my children, and I'm biting, and I'm harsh with my tongue towards my family, or I'm putting them down in some way, then I'm certainly not honoring God, right? I certainly don't have my priorities set correctly. But if I am saying that I love him and I want to walk in his ways and I want to walk in his spirit, as this passage was just talking about, then that means that the first person I'm going to show that with, or the first person I'm going to practice that with, is going to be Hans. And there's been years where I've not done a very good job at that, and there's been years where I've done an amazing job at that. And I think that all of us humans kind of go through seasons of doing amazing and not doing so amazing. And so same with the kids, they're the next one on my priority list, right? Is the kids and the grandkids. And then I have my family, like my extended family. And then of course I have my coworkers. And then of course there is the community that's connected to our coworkers at DannyJohnson.com. And then of course there is my interaction with the poor, and I mean the extreme poor, and what am I doing to help them? What am I doing to bless them? What am I doing to help their life change? Which is an important part of all of our purpose. And so I hope you understand what I'm saying. So, and to be honest with you, it takes walking in the spirit and being in the spirit in order to do those things properly. It really, really is. And so what does that mean? Okay, so according to like the dream or the goal that you might have inside of you. And so I know you might be going like, Danny, I'm not following you. I promise you, this is really important. Reality is that through the years, I've had different types of dreams and goals, and some of which I have control over, and some of which I do not have control over. Meaning some of which I can plot it out and I can do my best to achieve it, because some of it has only to do with what I will do to make that happen. And then there's other things that, are not so much, that might have to do with like my husband, right? So if there's something I want to do with my husband doesn't want to do it, it's not his dream, it's not his goal, then there has to be an honorable way where we are able to come together and kind of figure that out. And so if you are concerned that you might have a dream, or you might have something inside of you that is not godly, or it's not right, or it's somebody has made you feel like it's not worthy, or it's not purposed, or it's just just completely selfish, I want you to see a different side of your God. I want you to see and understand a different perspective of him. And so when I was talking about like, okay, so Hans and I have some different goals. We have some things that different passions, right? We have different desires. And there's several things that are like nowhere near each other. Like we don't have like any bit of a similar interest in some things at all. And then there's some things that we do have some common ground. And so traveling's a big deal for me. Like it really is. Like it does something inside of me. And maybe you have a dream to travel too, but you're thinking, oh, it must be selfish, or that if I'm not traveling, as a missionary, then it must not be godly. Friend, you are limiting God. You are totally limiting him. Okay, what does he ask us to do? He asked us to love him and to love our neighbor, all right? That's what the entire Bible is all summed up to be. Love him with all of our heart, all of our soul, with all of our strength and all of our resources, and love our neighbor. Love our spouse, who is our closest neighbor, our children, our coworkers, our community, love our customers, love our enemies, right? That's a whole nother part of it that I don't think any of us like, is to love our enemies, right? And so when it comes to like really looking at what some of these goals and dreams are, we have a tendency of over spiritualizing them. And so, if I'm a missionary, let's say that I have a desire to travel. So if I love God, that must mean that I'm called to become a missionary. And guess what? I'm telling you right now, nope, maybe not. That's not necessarily true. Here's what I can tell you, that if you had a goal to travel, and let's say that your spouse doesn't, but you do, and yet you're afraid to verbalize it, you're afraid to talk about it, you're afraid to think that, wow, is that like something really from God? What if it was? What if it was? What if it was? I want you to look at that thing that you're afraid to talk about, that desire that you have that you're afraid to even consider, because you've somehow rationalized yourself out of it. And I want you to bring it back up, put it on the table, and I want you to say, wow, what if this is God? What if it is him urging me to do this thing that I am afraid to say? It might be him. Come on, you know what it says in Jeremiah 29:11. I mean, come on, this is like one of the most overspoken scriptures in the Bible, that for I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you and to give you good health, not plans to harm you, right? And also we see that he says, I knew you before I knitted you in your mother's womb. Okay. He also says to bring your plans before me and I will help them to succeed. He says, man makes plans in his heart, but I order his steps. Okay. He says to make it down, like write the plan down, write the dream down and make it plain. Right? And he even has situations in there where it was like, I will send angels to make it happen. That he moves the heavens and the earth to make his will come to pass. And so here's one thing that you can do, because if everything I just said, like if none of those things like resonate with you, it's like, oh my gosh, okay, so if you pull that thing out that you're afraid to talk about, that you're afraid to believe, that you're afraid, that, oh, I don't know if this is from God and I just want to honor him, but I'm just not sure if this is from him. Here's what you do. You pull it back out on the table and you lay it down before him and you say this real simply: God, I want your desires in me. And I want the ability to understand your desire for me. And I want you to take away my desires. Take my desires and trash them. I don't want anything. By the way, I said this years ago. And when I was on the ship in Antarctica, and I began to tell you a story about what happens when you and your spouse don't see eye to eye together, and the great miracle. The whole point of that particular show was about the miracles that had happened in our marriage, because we were on our 25th wedding anniversary, and just kind of like, thinking all that through. And what came out of that after I finished talking to you that day, I walked away from that so convicted, and I literally sat back and I just went, it's been way too long since I have said that. It's been way too long since I have uttered that prayer. It's been way too long that I have done an inventory on my desires and laying them down before my Creator and making sure to follow that which is from Him, instead of just running fast on my own and in my own way, to literally lay down all of my desires before Him and let Him direct my path. And so travel, if you think that traveling must not be from Him, if you think that desire to travel around the world and to see new things and to try new things is not from Him, or whatever it is that you have, this hidden little desire, this hidden little goal that you think is not from Him, and therefore it's wrapped up in pretty, actually I'll say nasty packaging called guilt and shame and fear and control, I want you to take the wrapper off. I want you to put it back up on the table and say, God, this is a desire I have. I'm afraid to talk about it. I'm afraid to believe in it. And if this desire is from You, then I pray that You make it even bigger, and that You give me the courage to talk about it. You give me the courage to share about it. You give me the courage even to go like on social media and just like have a conversation with people about it. You give me the courage to talk to someone safe about it. But if it is not from You, then I ask that You just take this desire out of me. And I want to handle that little thought in your mind, that you decide on your own what's from God and what's not. And the reality is you're playing God when you do that. You're literally playing God when you do that. So as I said before, travel's been like a big thing for me. And I believe that it is Him that planted the desire inside of me, especially this last trip to Antarctica. Because things that I experienced there that literally drew me closer to Him, something I had been praying for, by the way, literally, for this past year, I had been praying like, God, I want that renewed salvation again. I want that renewed spirit in me. I don't want to walk in a dry place spiritually. I want to know You in a new and a fresh way. That's what I wanted. That was like my goal, if you will, for last year. And it wasn't an easy year. It wasn't at all. And I had some really big, disappointing failures that I did to myself, not that anyone else did, but I encountered some failures that I just was not proud of myself about. And while I was in Antarctica, I made a list of things that I learned from that experience, from being down in Antarctica and from this trip. And I learned a lot of things. And one of them was that He really speaks to me through beauty. And the beauty down in Antarctica is at a level that is unlike, I hate to say it, but I think it tops Bora Bora. And Bora Bora, 2006 is my first time going there. And look, I had this desire to go to this place called Bora Bora. Somebody had said it was like the most beautiful island in the world. And I'm not a beach person, right? I'm not a beach person. I'm not the, I'm just not. I'm more of a mountain, or at least at that time. And my mind has changed a little bit since then. But first time going to Bora Bora, I was overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed with the beauty. The beauty of it made me cry. And I remember like being at church and hearing these different songs that talk about the beauty of the Lord. And I'm like, that's just kind of weird. It's just kind of corny. What's that? What is that really like? Like the beauty of the Lord. And, we're sitting in this, building with sheetrock and wood and, and in some of them it's like now there's lights and steam and, big screens and, you feel like you're at some like rock concert or something and, which is, the music is great and, okay, whatever. So, but the beauty of the Lord and just going like, what is that? And I asked for years, like, what is it? I don't understand what that is until I went to Bora Bora. And when I went to Bora Bora, I finally encountered what that passage was saying about the beauty of the Lord. Like, whoa, like it's overwhelming to the point where it brings you to tears, to the point where it stops your insides. It's almost like your heart stops, your breath stops. You're just completely enamored with his glory, to be honest with you, with his beauty. And so that was the first time I ever encountered something like that. And I had so much growth encountering him in that way. And so here, this past trip to Antarctica, the same thing, but a whole nother level. And I can't stand the cold. I do not like cold weather at all. I like warm weather. And so here I've had this desire to go to Antarctica. I've had this desire to hit all 7 continents. And so on the outside, some very religious person is saying, well, that's just selfishness. That's just ridiculous. That's not of the Lord. That is not of God. Stop letting people tell you what is from him. Stop letting people tell you what's not from him. It's ridiculous. Could you imagine? Come on, here's Abraham in Genesis, right? Here's Abraham, and he is told, leave your father's house. Go traveling, dude. Pack a backpack and get your people, your team to pack a backpack, and y'all head out to a place I'm going to lead you to. Could you imagine if somebody told him? And maybe he did. I mean, his father might have told him, like, don't go. You're breaking my heart. You can't do this to me. But God planted that desire in him to leave his comforts, to leave the comfortable home that he had, the comfort of having his family around, his dad, his siblings, cousins, you know what I mean? His uncles, like everybody was in the same place. And it could be daunting. Leave your business, leave what you know, and go. A scary thing, right? And today, if it was today, there might have been people that would have said, well, that's kind of selfish. Or, oh, you must be called to the ministry. You must be called to the mission field. No, Abraham wasn't called to the mission field. He wasn't going to Canaan to evangelize anybody. Not at all. So isn't it so interesting that in our current church world, in our current society, that we over-spiritualize a lot of things and we come up with our own set of rules about how God talks and what he says and what he approves and what he disapproves. And so just because you might have a desire to travel doesn't mean you're selfish, number one. And number two, it doesn't mean you're called to be a missionary. That's not what that necessarily means. But what I can tell you is that these places that God has planted in my heart that I believe were from him, to go and to experience, brought me to a deeper understanding of him. And I had phenomenal moments. I've had amazing moments where everything in my body just stops. And tears are rolling down my face. And I realized on this last trip that, wow, beauty, and I mean majestic beauty, really profoundly changes something in me. So isn't it possible that God planted this desire in me to go down to Antarctica just for that? just for me to gain the understanding that the majestic beauty of my Creator, the majestic beauty of my Father, the majestic beauty commands me to worship Him. I ended up getting up super early because I didn't want to leave. I ended up being outside, and we're talking like 0 degrees, all bundled up, wind chill, crazy, not being able to sleep the night before because the majestic beauty calls me to worship Him. That majestic beauty that just draws me in to Him. The majestic beauty of that dark ocean and the beautiful white mountains that are 20,000 feet tall, and the icebergs that are like mountains all into themselves just sitting there in the ocean, where I was overwhelmed. And yet man can look at my desires, and especially a religious person can look at the desires to travel and judge it. But yet God was the one who was calling me to that place, to bring me to this place that I cannot experience in a church building. I'm not saying I have not experienced true worship in a church. Of course I have, so many times, and tears and all of that stuff. What I'm telling you is it's a whole nother level of worship. It's a whole nother level where your being is doing it. It's not something that you have to shut your mind off and stop watching all the distractions that are around you sometimes when I'm in a church, but it's more of like my being was brought to be still in that moment. Like boom, it was so powerful that everything in me was like stopped, halted, stillness of the Lord brought inside of me. So listen, I want you to take that dream. It's 2019. I want you to take that secret hidden thing inside of you that you're afraid to talk about, that you're afraid to explore, that you have rationalized that it must not be for God or it must not be meant to be. I want you to take it out, dust it off, take all the junk that you've piled on top of it and talking yourself out of it, put it out there on the table, sit there and say, okay, God, this desire has not left me. This desire too, and then fill in the blanks, has not left me. So if this is from you, then I'm going to agree with you to step out and trust you to go out and accomplish it. If this is not from you, then I ask that you take it away completely from me. I want to follow you and I want to follow your ways, and I don't want to rationalize and talk myself out of what's you or what's not you. Come on, it says in His word that it says that my thoughts are higher than your thoughts and my ways are higher than your ways. So what if He wants to do that very thing with you for a much bigger, deeper purpose than what you think? Quit rationalizing and start trusting. And if you're not sure if it's your desire, if it's His desire that He planted in you, then lay that down before Him. Lay it down before Him and tell Him, I'm not sure. He already knows you're not sure. But friend, I really believe that this year, you are going to have an experience that you were not expecting. And it is going to be a profound experience that perhaps will shape the rest of your life. It'll be a cornerstone experience that is going to shape the rest of your life. So do it today. Today, in fact, as soon as you and I are done with this conversation, I want you to sit. Maybe open up a journal, piece of paper. And I want you to write what you heard me talk to you about. And I want you to do what I just asked you to do. Bring up that thing or those few things. Lay it before Him and just talk. God. In fact, I'll show you how even right now. God, you're the creator of the heavens and the earth. Father, I want my desires to only be your desires. Plant your desires in me. Plant your desires in me. and I give you my desires as an exchange. So God, even show me the desires that I have and the things that I am chasing and the places that I am going, that I've made up my mind on my own to go and chase and do without coming to you first. You know where I've come from, and you know where I'm going. You know all things. You know how you made me. You know how you formed me. And you know what you had in mind when you did it. So, Father, please take the desires out of me that do not line up with what you have for me. And I give you my fears that you might have me go do things that I do not want to do. I give those fears to you. And I ask that you plant the desires in me and that I agree with it. And forgive me, Father, for the places I've gone and things I've done that are not of you, that are not of your desires. I ask these things. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, amen. It's in the name of Jesus the Messiah, amen. Don't you understand that if you allow his desires to penetrate you, they now become your desires. So you now want what he wants. You now want what he wants. And when you want what he wants, he does it. He does it. So you don't have anything to worry about. You have nothing to worry about. It's like this. You know, when I first became a millionaire, it was all about me making money, friend. It was all about me making money. It was all about nice cars. It was all about nice houses. It was all about big fat jewelry. It was all about nice clothes. It was all about status. It was all about, man, I'm going to be more respected, you know. I'm going to show to the world that I'm something. But all along, I believe God was the one that planted that desire in me because he brought me to the end of what that world had to offer, which was a trap, and it was greed, and it was bondage, and it was pain, and it was suffering. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. He then planted a desire in me to help those who can't help themselves. He also planted in me a desire to help people to succeed wildly in the marketplace, especially those who call upon his name, especially those who say they are called by his name, yet they're failing in their marriages, and they're failing with their kids, and they're failing financially, and they're failing with a dream and a goal, and they have no idea how to make that thing happen. And they're not the example that they desire to be. And so here he gave me the desire to help these two types of people. And if he had not walked me through the glitz and the glamour and all that other junk that was just so empty, and he pruned me and planted a desire in me to love people. I used to hate people. And I'm so glad that I don't hate people anymore. In fact, I feel so blessed that, you know, coming up here in a short few days is the first steps to success, where I get the chance to meet these people, some that know him and some that don't, and some really don't care whether or not they know him. But they've got something in them that is saying something has to change. They've got something in them that says, I'm so sick and tired of being controlled by my religion, and I'm sick and tired of being controlled by my society. I'm sick and tired of being controlled in my marriage and being controlled by my kids. I'm sick and tired of being controlled by my debt and being controlled by my work life. I'm tired of all the controls that are on my life. And they're coming to this 3-day powerful event to get the clarity and the understanding about how to come out of that just crazy controlled life and to walk in a level of freedom that they have a desire and an inkling that maybe, gosh, it'd be great if, but they don't know how to get there. And they will learn exactly how to get to that freedom and how to get to that adventure and no longer be crucified by religion. But instead they will crucify the things that are actually controlling them, and the things are not the people. They're going to learn. It's so exciting to think that they're going to learn exactly how I went from homeless to millions and have a finished copy and a plan about how to get promoted in their careers and how to take the marriage to a place of harmony and peace and thrill even and adventure that they haven't yet experienced. And even if they think they've experienced some of it, it's like you haven't even come close. You haven't even scratched the surface. So when I look back at the person that I was who hated people and I was just greedy to now here we are producing an event next weekend where I work as a complete volunteer, and here comes a people who are hungry, who are driven, who are a part of a powerful community, who are doing great things in the world. And the new people who are going to be joining us in that weekend, for them to experience that and have this just final copy. Here's how to do it, man. Here's the how-tos. Here's the reason why you need to, and here's the how to get it done. And here's how to end 2019, how to build a 2019, or here's how to build a new year that is so powerful that everyone around you is going to be sitting at your feet saying, how? Tell me how, tell me how, tell me how. You're showing me that it's possible. Tell me how, tell me how. So I don't know if you have been to First Steps to Success yet or not, or you've been 50 or 60 times. It's time to get back. And if you haven't been yet, the time is right now. It's right now. You're in a brand new season. It's a new time. And it's time to get a different plan and a different playbook for you to win this year. Because your current playbook is not going to take you to higher levels of winning. Your current playbook is just going to produce the same plays that you did last year. It's your current playbook is just going to produce the same thing in your spirit. It's going to produce the same thing in your finances. Your current playbook is going to produce the same thing in your marriage and with your family. It's going to produce the same things at work. So if you want things to change, you've got to have a different playbook. And that playbook you're going to be using for 3 solid days. You're going to get it and you're going to use it. You're going to start implementing it. But by the time you leave that particular event, you're going to have some brand new skills in your hands, knowing that the playbook you've got right now is the one that wins. It's the one that wins, and it wins every single time. So I hope to see you here in a couple of days. I hope to see you, and I hope to have you and hear your story one day. We want your story. We want your story to go out to millions of people so you can be the one inspiring those millions of people that anything is possible. So I'm believing that this year is going to be the greatest year you've ever had in your life. I am believing that you're going to have a playbook in your hands that is going to be the best playbook you've ever had in your hands. And I believe that you're going to have the intuition as well as the strength and the focus to follow those plays that are in that playbook. And I really, really believe that this is going to be a cornerstone year for you, that you're going to learn things that you're going to carry with you for the rest of your life that are going to produce the results that you've been desiring all this time. And I truly believe that upon you and I on this meeting today with today's message, that you're going to pull that out, that piece of paper, or start journaling. What are those desires that you have buried? And it's time to pull them out. And it's time to say, okay, God, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. All right, that's it for me. Thanks so much for joining us. By the way, if you don't have your copy of First Steps to Wealth, you can go over to firststepstowealth.com. If you want to register for First Steps to Success, go to DannyJohnson.com right now. DannyJohnson.com. Get registered right this minute. This is your time. This is your season. Let's blow it out this year to something really amazing and special. I don't care where you have to travel from. Just make it happen. All right? So I will see you in a few short days. God bless. Bye.